Hello, welcome to our OSU Rio live streaming Thursday telecast. I'm Patrick Dangle, executive producer of the Telecast programming at the Ohio State University South Centers. We at the South Centers collaborate with the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College to promote small businesses, educational programs, students, faculty, agriculture, aquaculture programs, as well as business organizations. Our mission is to provide educational programming regarding growing our communities in southern Ohio, as well as in the state of Ohio, surrounding states, and likewise on a global basis. Over 100,000 viewers and listeners have tuned into our different telecasts, which encompasses 178 countries. This week's theme is international culture within our universities and how our telecasts assist people we serve. We have as our featured guest Dustin Homan, who is a graduate student with the Ohio State University and who is an employee of the Ohio 4-H program. He has completed his master's in agricultural and extension education, and he is very active with the 4-H program and has been working on an international basis with people from several countries in developing a strong or stronger 4-H program, and these include Nigeria and most recently Ghana. Welcome, Dustin, to our live streaming program. It is a great pleasure to talk with you, Dustin. Before we talk about Ghana, let's let the listening audience talk a little bit about you. So tell us about yourself and how you ended up in the position that you're at.
Sure. Well, I'm a Buckeye born and raised. I grew up in west central Ohio in a little town called Anna of about 2,000 people. 2 stoplights is what the town is known for. We're also known as the earthquake capital of Ohio.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. But I grew up there in a rural area, and my family had a rich tradition in agriculture. My grandfather grew up on a farm. He had a small farm himself of beef cattle as well as some corn and soybeans. And so my aunts and uncles on my mother's side were all very active within that industry. My uncle Bruce works for Beck's Hybrids. He was a national FFA officer. My mother served in some leadership positions as well, including on the state junior fair board. So there was a rich, as I said, a rich history of agriculture. And when I was born into that. And I was very blessed to be able to grow up in the 4-H program. I spent 10 years as a member of the Kettlersville Livestock 4-H Club, where I showed market rabbits, as well as some other special interest projects, including photography and public speaking. When I got into high school, I naturally joined the FFA program. FFA previously stood for the Future Farmers of America, but now it's just known as the National FFA Organization. And I credit a lot of my personal development and professional goals to being in those 2 student organizations. And so when it came to make a decision about going to college, in my mind there was only one option, and that was The Ohio State University. My parents were a little concerned about me potentially not getting in and what that would mean for them, but thankfully I got in and was able to complete my degree at Ohio State, as you mentioned, within agriculture and extension education. Spent a few years in the industry, decided to come back now to get my master's degree. But it was really during my time as an undergrad where I met a mentor of mine, Mickey Zartman. Mickey had a vision for starting an agricultural awareness day within the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Sciences. And as part of that, her passion started to spread beyond Ohio. And she was involved with the World Food Prize. And because of that, I had an opportunity to take my first international experience between my junior and senior years at Ohio State to Kenya. And I worked with youth in agriculture there, with the World Agroforestry Association. And I've heard from so many people that travel that you catch a bug. And I think that's just the best way to describe it. So when I came back to Ohio State, I decided that my personal mission in life would be to try to connect youth and agriculture in order to solve some of our world's most wicked problems, and one of them being food security. So because of that experience in Kenya, as you had mentioned, I've had opportunities in Nicaragua, Ghana, and in the coming months, I'll be going to Nigeria as well. So I'm looking forward to that trip, but continuing to achieve my personal mission in food security. One of the pictures that hopefully will be showed on the screen is a map of the 4-H program around the world. I'm very proud that this 4-H organization started in our state, just a couple miles down the road. I live in Columbus now, in Clark County, in 1902. And over the past 100 plus years has spread to over 50 countries around the world, involving 7 million youth. It's one of the largest youth organizations in the world. And this network allows us to do some incredible programming and to connect youth with common interests and goals across geographic boundaries. And so I'm excited to continue that. On the picture that you see with the 4-H map, each country that is in green has or at one time had a 4-H program.
And those are a number. And how many countries did you say participate in the 4-H program?
It's currently active in over 50 countries across the world.
That is fantastic. See, I was a city boy, and so consequently I was not part of the farming community. And it was when my children were growing up, they were involved with the 4-H program. But I did not realize that 4-H really extended across the oceans.
Absolutely. And even as you mentioned, we're really trying to make a concerted effort to reach across perceptions and stereotypes that 4-H is only for the rural areas. It's only something for the ag kids. We have a very robust program here in Franklin County, led by Beth Boomershine and Sue Hogan, that's doing incredible things with inner city youth. And it's the philosophy and framework of 4-H that we develop any youth, regardless of where you come from or your situation. And that's one reason that I want to be involved with this organization for the rest of my career.
Well, I think the 4-H program has been very good in helping individuals become better aware of their environment, better aware of health, home, different aspects of that nature. So what? How were you able to get to Ghana? Let's talk about Ghana a little bit, and Dwayne's going to put on a map of where Ghana is. It is in Africa, is that correct?
That's correct, in Western Africa.
And here we have Ghana is on the Pacific Ocean, is that correct?
Atlantic.
Or is it the Atlantic? I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I'm confusing everyone. It's on the Atlantic Ocean. So Ghana has a rich history of being involved with the European nations.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have a more concerted effort of Ghana. And let's talk a little bit about the history of Ghana, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So and this is, I love history. So one thing I love about traveling is being able to go to some of these sites and really to envelop yourself in the local community, because there's only so much that you can read about it through books. So Ghana was previously a British colony. It was actually the first country in Africa to declare its independence from colonial rule.
Wow.
And it's something
Very good.
that, the Ghanaians are very proud of. As you mentioned, I just returned from Ghana. I got back this past Monday, March 6th, which is their National Independence Day. So I was a little bummed I couldn't spend an extra day there, really enjoy and celebrate that with them. But, I know we really do a lot to celebrate our Independence Day, but man, the Ghanaian culture, the parties and the music that they have to celebrate it is just contagious. Anyway.
So that was on March the 6th, 1957, correct? When they declared that. Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah, I believe, and they were celebrating their 60th anniversary this
Very
year.
good.
Yeah, so and as you mentioned, the country has had connections to the Western world, and so part of the reason that I got involved was through an organization called Agricor, and Agricor is a new nonprofit organization. It's very similar to Peace Corps, but it focuses exclusively on agricultural education. So fellows are recruited from the U.S. and predominantly within their undergraduates or graduate students who have just graduated and focused in on agriculture fields. And they're placed in countries in order to teach youth through the 4-H program about agriculture and leadership. We were originally supposed to go to Liberia, and as many may recall, a couple years ago, the Ebola epidemic unfortunately deterred our plans. And so within 2 weeks, we made the switch from Liberia to Ghana. And while I'm sure I would have enjoyed my time in Liberia, I'm so grateful, and I believe that it was a plan for me to be there. So I spent 8 months in 2014 in Ghana working with the 4-H Ghana organization. I was in their headquarters office in Koforidua, which is in the eastern region, which is towards the southeastern part of the country. And I spent a lot of time working with them to mobilize resources, making connections with organizations like Cargill, who are very active in the country. If you get the chance to flip to the picture called Cocoa, there's a photo of me interviewing some cocoa farmers. Ghana is the #2 producer of cocoa in the world, and they claim that however, that it's the highest quality. And so because of that, you see multinational organizations that are very active there, like Cargill and Nestle.
See, I was surprised. I thought cocoa was primarily a South African or a South American product. But I didn't realize that they were a major producer of cocoa.
Yes, and their neighbors, Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire, they are the #1 producer. So that region is a very high producer of the cocoa and the chocolate that we get to eventually that becomes chocolate that we get to enjoy all over the world. And so there's a rich agricultural heritage there, and there's organizations there that share similar goals in wanting to get youth involved in agriculture so that as they grow, there will continue to be cocoa that companies like Cargill and Nestle can continue to process. Ghana in and of itself faces some challenges related to this. It's a very young country. It has a very high unemployment, especially for the youth. And because of that, there's a large migration of youth from the rural to the urban areas. And so with that comes potentially some consequences of poverty in urban areas, which can then lead to violence. But there's also brain drain. And so some of these rural communities they're schooling some of the best and brightest youth in their communities, and then those youth are leaving to go to the city. That's not just a Ghana problem either. It's something we face here. However, the 4-H organization has come into that culture and trying to show youth that agriculture is not a poor man's profession. It's something that you can consider yourself an entrepreneur, an engineer, a businessman, and still be a farmer. And so through this youth organization, we're trying to instill that at a very young age. And I was very fortunate to be able.
I think that's very, very important. It's rather interesting in Ohio, having done a number of different broadcasts. Ohio, it's my understanding, needs 50,000 different individuals to fill agricultural programs, and farming is only one of those. And
Sure.
In Ghana, as you're pointing out, agriculture leads to many other side industries or educational programs or those areas that help to make the country stronger. So
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
And I'm a believer that unless your belly is full, you're not able to do other things. And
That's
so
true.
in the academic world, we often refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's a triangle. And at the bottom of that triangle in order for people to be able to be creative, to think, to be entrepreneurs, the first thing they have to be able to do is to satisfy their most basic needs of food, water, shelter.
Yes.
And so ensuring Ghana is considered a food deficit country, meaning they don't produce enough food to meet the demand. So that's really, in my eyes, that's one of the number one goals for this country is we can get to that point. Then we can start to focus on some of these other issues.
So there's what 27 million individuals that live in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like living in Ghana? Is it a poor country, a rich country? Is it primarily agricultural base or farmland? Or tell us a little bit about.
Sure. So I'll throw some statistics out at you first for those people like myself who really enjoy those, and then I have some photos
Okay,
that
great.
I'll use to back that up as well. Within Ghana, according to the CIA and FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, 66% of their land is considered agricultural land. So that's 2/3 of the country is considered in use for agriculture. So agriculture is currently the predominant profession within the country.
In the United States, we're about the same statistic, or maybe we're a little bit more. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. In terms of employment, though, I know in the U.S. we often say less than 2% of the population is directly involved with farming, and in Ghana, you're looking at over 50% of the population.
Okay, all right.
And so I often tell people that, some of the problems that Ghana is facing, we faced them here in the United States, a couple decades ago as well. So these are just normal development trends that we typically see as a country is developing. Ghana has recently moved from a low income country to a low medium income country, and that's basically the transition
very good
a low to medium. So that's a positive thing to see. To show you a couple of the photos just about kind of what my daily life was like in Ghana. The photo entitled Food shows a picture of a typical meal and how it is taken in Ghana. There's similar to the U.S., they typically have some carbohydrate, a little bit of meat, and then what's kind of unique to the Ghanaian culture is it usually comes with some type of tomato-based stew or soup.
Oh, okay.
And so what you see here is I'm attempting to enjoy some banku, which is a product made from cassava and plantain. I tried anything while I was in country, but I quickly found that banku was something I did not enjoy. The texture and kind of the lack of taste was something I didn't prefer. So I normally stuck with rice when it came to my different meals.
Very good. Do they grow a lot of rice in Ghana?
They don't, and that's one initiative of the government there is to try to grow more rice so they don't have to import as much. They grow a lot of cassava, a lot of plantain. I loved taking fried plantain. It was one of my sweet treats that I would take while I was there. And in terms of meat, there are a lot of chickens. Not in the way that we would know them here. There are a lot of families that just have a flock of chickens, and so they use those chickens obviously for eggs, for protein, and then to eat as well. There's also a lot of guinea fowl, which is a similar looking bird to a chicken. Not quite as much meat on that one. That would be taken as well. We also saw some goat, fish, and beef available, but not as much as the chicken that was available.
Since it's on the coastline, and there's a lot of waterways, etc. You have been indicating that fish was one of the main kind of foods.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they are dealing with some overfishing. There's a really large lake there called Lake Volta, and so the people that live along that lake, their profession and their livelihoods depend on the fishing industry, and so they are dealing with some issues of overfishing, and because of that, the fish have become a lot smaller.
Huh.
And you'll see that in the market as well, that it's hard to find a nice big fish fillet similar to what we would be able to buy in a grocery store here.
Hmm. Do they
Uh,
have stores like, oh, we have Kroger's here, or some of the different? Do they have big market supermarkets like we have?
yeah, I have a picture about that to show you. The picture that's called Shop.
Shop.
Um, Shop.
Okay.
Yeah, that this photo is a picture of a typical store that you would see along the side of the roads, and the
Oh.
roads would be peppered with these. And people typically specialized in one thing, so one shop may have foodstuffs, another shop may be selling tires, but they all kind of look similar to this with this metal container, and it would kind of spill out onto a patio. They do have some large box stores like Walmart. Their store similar to that is called Melcom. They have a ShopRite, which I would compare to maybe like a Target or Meijer here. But those you really only see in the big cities. In the rural areas, you see the shops like this.
Huh. In in America, we would call these convenience stores.
That's a good way to think about these. Sure.
But it is interesting. It does provide families with employment.
Sure. Yeah, and being able to connect, as we like to say here, the farm to plate. And so a lot of these shops you would find that the family had a plot and they were growing some type of food, and then they would attempt to sell that. Unfortunately, what we also saw is that a lot of people were trying to do this, and so there was a lot of competition as well. So as the country moves forward, it'll be interesting to see if they try to focus on processing and maybe diversifying some of their agricultural goods in order to provide more opportunities in the market for different people.
Hmm. Dustin, we only have about 4.5 more minutes, and I know that Ghana is one of those areas that we as Americans know really a little bit, and it's so we have to have you come back on and talk more about Ghana. But what are some interesting things about Ghana that you would like to have the listening audience know more about? And my second question is, why should people go and visit Ghana? So,
to address your first question, having just come back from there, the thing that almost makes me homesick now, being back here in Ohio, is just the friendliness of people. I think in the U.S. we live in a culture of time, and we live in a culture of tasks. Ghana lives in a culture of friendships and family and community. And I'll never forget one time walking to work, and I had my headphones in, and that was something typical I would do here. And someone called me out on it. I was walking down the street, and they called me out and said, "Take out your headphones, look up, engage, say hello, greet people." And that is pervasive across the entire culture. Most people, if you look lost, they'll come up to you and help you. I had one Ghanaian tell me that they want to do whatever it takes to provide an experience that I will come back to the U.S. and do what I'm doing now, to tell other people, you have to visit. I felt completely safe while I was there. And transportation is a little bit of a challenge there, but if you just have some patience, you can get around. You can get to some of the amazing national parks and museums that pepper throughout the country. The environment there is very diverse. It'd be like going from the northern U.S. to the southern U.S. So there's a savanna and kind of desert area, and then lush rainforest and the ocean and beaches. And so in one country, about the size of Oregon, you can get all of this. Not to mention, it's still cheap. I could eat a full meal for $2 US. So it's very economical. And on your last point about why people should go, there's a picture that I provided called Wedding. And I think that this really shows kind of a test to what I was mentioning earlier. This is my friend Joe, who I met through 4-H. And just within a few months of me being there, he asked me to be the best man in his wedding. And to me, who does that, right? Some complete stranger, and you want that person to stand there beside you. And I remember thinking that maybe it was just a skin color thing and that he wanted to get attention. And finally I asked him about it, and he said, no, it's about hearts and it's about love. And I want people across the world to see it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter the skin color. We're all brothers and sisters. And that thinking is you find it in almost any person in Ghana. And so I don't know why you wouldn't want to visit after hearing some of that. So I would encourage everyone, if they get the opportunity, to at least make a small stop in Ghana.
Yeah, what I found very interesting is the color green that they used, and it sounds like you really have had a very rich experience in Ghana. When you come back from Nigeria, or is it Ecuador? Nigeria?
Yeah.
We'd like to find out more. One of the things that I found with understanding better cultures is that people are people. And we in the United States really should get out and see on a more global basis that just because they have a different culture, just because they talk different, they have different languages, they may have different religions. When you come right down to it, people like to be treated like they treat others. And, you know, it's unfortunate that we do have some bad experiences once in a while. But for the most part, people are just ordinary, and they want to get along. And that's what I like about our culture, our international culture, is that you can come on and other individuals can come on and share experiences that are fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
So, again, we're talking with Dustin Homan. Dustin is an agricultural student who is a graduate student who will be completing his graduate degree. He recently went to Ghana, and his next trip is Nigeria. He works with the 4-H group at Ohio State University. In behalf of our listening audience, I thank you very much for tuning in. And Dustin, thank you for making yourself available to us.
Thank you.
On behalf of Dwayne Rigsby, who is behind the scene, making us look good, I bid you a farewell and see you next week.